Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Today's guest is Jay Wong. Jay Wong is the founder of Podcast Your Brand, a company that helps emerging thought leaders, business owners, and companies launch top 100 shows on iTunes so they can put a voice to their marketing and amplify their reach and impact to new customers. His agency has been working with franchise companies listed on the Inc. 5000 to increase the retention rates of new operators by 15%, plus, as well as increasing annual sales by an average of 21% in 2019. He is also a serial entrepreneur, real estate investor, and host of the Inner Change Maker, rated #1 self-help podcast on iTunes. With interviews from game-changing entrepreneurs, multimillionaires, New York Times best-selling authors, and even billionaires, Jay has leveraged his years of content marketing and content creation to help the next generation of thought leaders share their message. I'm going to start today's episode with a quote. Do not despair. Do not give up. Look for the sunlight through the clouds. Opportunities will eventually open to you. Gordon B. Hinckley. Today we talked about take a moment to freak the freak out. That it's okay to freak out. And if somebody is drowning, you want to get them out of the pool first and give them a towel. So you may not feel a little bit calm right now while the world is in chaos. And it's all right to take a moment to freak out. We talk about how important it is to keep that high performance routine going, your morning routine, your gratitude routine, your walk, your working out, and taking care of your health, that high performance routine. It gives you a semblance of calm in the storm. And assessing where you're at, what's your worst case scenario, and adjusting, finding a solution for now. Creating something new out of the chaos, starting your own podcast, and how some of the best creations come from despair. This is a high energy episode. I'm on a roll this week, you guys. I have somebody that is in charge of a podcasting company, and he's super young and very successful. I'm so excited to welcome Jay Wong to the show. Welcome.
Linda, super excited. Super excited to be here in this crazy time, but I love that we made time for this.
Well, I know, and I think it's so relevant right now to become creative in times like these. It's like, desperate measures, desperate times, and I think sometimes the best creations and inventions come out of despair.
That's right.
So what are you doing to be innovative right now, Jay?
Well, so this is the week. I don't know when this is going to go out, but literally in this week, I think most business owners, whether you're a small business owner or even running a big company, I think everybody's been kind of like the initial kind of first week, right? Because spring break is out in Canada. We have we don't call it spring break, but they call it March break. Right. So all the kids are kind of like back home. Right. And the whole idea of this global pandemic, just kind of, every single time, I tune in to any type of social media or news, there seems to be like a new update, right? Whether it's a stimulus package or a country band. So this week has been a very, very interesting week. And I'll tell you, we sent out a letter to all of our clients on this past Sunday. And we said, hey, I know this is a very trying time. Nobody knows what's going on. No one really predicted all this stuff happening. But now more than ever, if you have a platform like Linda, if you have a podcast, if you have a bit of a community, if you have an email list, you have some type of a platform, you have some type of influence, it is your responsibility in a lot of regards to be able to go out there and not add to the noise, right? and be able to create some type of context, So, for shows that we work on that talk about, let's say, real estate or real estate investing, right? Don't talk necessarily about the pandemic, but talk about how does it impact real estate investors today, right? What's going on? Like, how do I make sense of all, feds are cutting, these mortgage rates or this interest rate? How do I make sense of that? Right. And so we've seen so many different podcast hosts from so many different genres, whether it's fitness, whether it's real estate, whether it's business, whether it's their own company, CEOs stepping out and saying, hey, look, this is a time of crisis. This is how leaders can step up and act in a time of crisis and to be calm. Right. And so it's not necessarily an innovation, but I do think in the last few years, I think the internet world has just gotten so much noisier, right? Like everybody, right, could be an Instagram star. Everybody could be a TikTok person, right? Everybody could put some audio, record some content, put it online, right? I think just because you're making, a lot of noise doesn't necessarily make you a leader, right?
It doesn't make you relevant, does it?
And it doesn't make you relevant because the world's not craving more content, right? Disney Plus, Netflix, podcast, everybody has a lot of content, but there's only so many places that could help me put that into context, right? And I don't necessarily, it's not a technology type of innovation, but that is one of the things that we always talk about with so many of our hosts, so many of our students, so many of our clients, and saying, how can we create more context out there to help people?
And I really think right now, to be calm and not panic and just focus on where you're at right now, because it's changing so fast and so rapidly every day with something new on the news, that I think you just have to focus on the basics. And after, I feel like I've lived a few desert storms in my life. I mean, I feel I've went through the trenches, and if you've anybody out there that's listened to the podcast, they know some of the hardships I've had in life. So this to me is homeostasis. I'm like, okay, it's survival mode time. And I think before it was live your big dreams. But right now, I think people are out there worried about, how am I going to survive this? What are some tips for them today, Jay? And we want to thrive, but how do they survive all of the chaos?
Do you mean in a business sense, or do you mean like in a kind of family, personal life included?
Business first.
Yeah. So look,
everything else trickles out from that.
Yeah, like, look, I know for the ladies that are listening, right, to your show, like, I don't know about for them, but I imagine that business is such a big component, right, of our lives. And I know for me, it's such a big, we have multiple different businesses, real, investments and real estate. So like, we try to look at things as, okay, first from a personal level, let's make sure our health, right? Like, let's not all the high performance stuff, all the good mental, like personal development, leadership stuff, like let's not like leave those.
Right.
Like, this is actually the time.
It's the time practice. You need it the most.
It's the time to do the gratitude walks, even if it's in your backyard or in your house, right? It's the time to do your morning routine fully. It's the time to do the waters and get decent sleep. So you got to take care of like the absolute basics, right? But I think when it comes to business, first and foremost is looking at the cash accounts and looking at your accounts receivable and taking a very objective look at everything that's going on. Because depending on how your business model is like, I know for me, we've gotten a chance to chat with some of our clients that are big speakers. They get paid there's no real way around it. They get paid a lot of money to show up to go speak or to do a training for a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 1000. Right.
Absolutely.
And literally if you can imagine, their calendar just got decimated. Right. And they don't know if their business just got decimated. Does that mean that? Right. And so I think before we get into all the if scenarios or how do we react and all that, I think the objective thing to do really is to say, let's look at kind of like, let's do an inventory, right? When we onboard a client, we do a brand inventory. Hey, where's your brand at right now? Right? What's going on? So let me know about your offers. Let me know about your email. Like, what do you have going on, right? Before we go hoarding, groceries and going to the store, let's look at the pantry. Let's look at what we have, right? So I think that's the first and foremost thing of how much cash do we have? How much accounts receivable do we have, right? Very, very tactical, And then the other thing, I think I'm a big believer of like, you got to hit, you can't be scared of some of the big questions and some of the big obstacles, right? And I think a lot of the stuff that plays in people's psyche is they're scared of like the quote unquote worst case scenario, right? And I would make an argument that, hey, I don't think anybody really predicted, the state of panic and overwhelm and anxiety that I think is flooding the market right now.
Yeah.
But ask yourself that question. Hey, what is the worst case scenario? What happens if what happens to my small business if we're not allowed to go back to quote unquote normal life for 6 months? What happens for a year? Obviously, nobody wants to, be able to, to actually go through with that. But I think in answering that question, right, and journaling about it and actually saying, okay, this is the worst case scenario right now, it, I think, puts us in a more proactive state of mind, right? Because we can start asking better questions. Okay, do I like that answer, right? Do I like how much cash we have coming in and how much is in our account? Because then we can be proactive. Okay, what are we going to do about that then? Does that make sense?
Yes, and it just reminds me of a statement my father used to say, life is adjustment from birth to the grave. Those who adjust do well. And so I think we have to adjust to what's going on currently. So you have to take a look, like you said, at the inventory, and then you have to assess worst case scenario and what can I do right now? Like, I'm going to go virtually online and I'm going to teach Zoom to all of my people, and we're going to have class and we're going to work out and we're going to be able to communicate back and forth on the Zoom. I'm going to do that. And I'm also equally going to coach my personal training clients online as well.
That's right.
I think you have to find what solution can I take right now? Instead of panicking, just look, like you said, and do the inventory and then assess.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I think, it's instead of, staying calm, right? Because it seems like, okay, that seems like something nice that everybody is saying, right? Like, stay calm. It's like, okay, well, I'm panicking. I'm freaking out. So look, here's one of my clients had this brilliant thing. He says, look, if somebody is drowning, right? Like, I'm not a very good
They're not going to be calm if they're drowning. That's for sure.
They're just not calm. Right. So in that scenario, you do not want to sell them. Yeah. You don't want to sell them take swimming courses, for the next 6 weeks. Right. You also don't want to sell them anything. Like, what do they need? They need to get out of the water
right now.
Right. Like they need the moment where you wrap the towel around them and you tell them it's okay. Right. So I think it's a little bit of like, hey, if I need to freak out, let's freak out. Let's schedule it in. Let's freak out this morning. Right. Let's go crazy. Let's freak out. But at the end of this, okay, I want to look at, I want to look at my cash in an unemotional way. Right. I want to look at like the worst case scenario and I want to go, okay, that's reality right now. Right now, from there, what can I, like, what are the offers that I have? How can you're so spot on. How can I make those virtual? How can I make them even better? Right. What are the real reasons that people are working with you? Right. Is it just the workouts? Right. Like I can give you an example, which is, a lot of times people think, oh, we're a podcast agency. So you guys do, I know how to do a podcast. So why would I hire you guys? It's like, well, you guys could totally do a podcast. Everybody could do a podcast. Right. But just like everybody could move in their home, everybody knows that they should move. Right. But it's not necessarily just the podcast. It's not just the mechanics of it. Right. There's a certain sense of confidence that our clients get when they work with us. Right.
I hold them accountable. That's one of them.
There's a certain, exactly. Right. Yeah. I imagine for moving, it's accountability. Yeah. It's showing up. It's creating an experience that I can take a picture of, right? And I can
knowledge
post it.
And belief. I believe in my clients until they can believe in themselves.
That's right. That's right. So I think all those things, it's like I think we know these things. I think they're, fundamentals. I think it's almost like we throw them around when times are good, But that's what I see a lot of times these days. People are like trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like, no, no, no. All that good stuff that you were doing when times were good, double down on those, you know? And I
And
think that's a really good starting point.
you made me want to go back to high school and do Freak Out. The freak is a chic. And I'm just telling you, maybe a little dance party here and there to remind yourself, you know, because like today, it's a beautiful day in Ohio. It's warm and
Yeah.
it's sunny. And I walked outside and that reminded me, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful day. Like, because you're hearing all the gloom and doom constantly on the media, which is scary. And yes, you should socially distance.
Yes, yes, that does
Dance
help.
party from afar.
Yes. A lot of people are hopping on Zoom. If you're able to pick up some Zoom stocks, I imagine it's done. It'll do better once you know this whole thing blows over. But you know, I think people are, you know, but then again, it's only been, this thing is moving so fast. It's only been 10 days. I don't blame people at the same time for not having adjusted
I
properly
think they
because
don't have a grip on it yet. And
right,
some people are adjusting very quickly.
that's
Uh,
right.
and I think I'm kind of on that trend, but just the hair off, like, you know, where I was just like, oh, okay, this is moving fast. This is moving
Yeah,
real fast.
yeah.
Went from thinking, well, I'll do one-on-one clients standing 6 feet apart to, no, I think we're going to have to do this online.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, just like you said at the beginning, it's there's a lot of opportunity. Anytime that there is a crisis, there's so much opportunity, right? And it's not to say, hey, I want to profit from what's going on in the marketplace,
How can I
but
help? Because that's usually
how
going to lead to something.
how how can I serve?
Yeah,
Right? How can I lean into my gifts even further? Right?
right. Yes, because oh my gosh, people are desperate for them right now. Do you know how many people would kill to be able to come into the gym right now? I mean, not kill, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think like they're realizing the value of the service even more than they ever did before, and the motivation and the inspiration. You know, I was lucky enough to squeak under the radar and get my hair done, but I think, you know, the hair salons are now closed. And
Yeah.
you probably value the person that does your hair. I mean, I know you're a guy, but you know, we
But
value the
I do have
nails,
great
the
hair, is what you're
hair.
saying.
You know, I couldn't buy shampoo. I was like, oh
Right.
my gosh, I had to order it online.
Yeah.
And you know, the essential things though, my husband was cracking up at me because I was like, now this is serious. The hair salon, the tanning salon, the nail salon, and the gym are all closed. And he's like, oh, come on now. That's not that serious. And then he went to the store and he wanted to buy dog food. And he's like, they're all out of dog food. This is serious. This is serious now. But
Yeah.
it just depends on what's relevant to the person. The small businesses that all have to close. I mean, you know, at some point we all know we're going to pay some kind of a price.
Yeah. Well, I think this is why, I mean, I think this time is actually showcasing an amazing mirror for so many different entrepreneurs or thought leaders or influencers and companies in general, right? How proactive have you been in thinking about the indescribable worst case situations when times were really good,
Yeah,
right?
not
And
at
I think
all.
a lot of times people don't necessarily jump to that. You know, hey, why are you being so negative? I don't think it's necessarily being negative. I think it's being proactive, right? Because if the world does shut down, it does come down to, hey, how much, you know what I mean? How much cash do we have? What's the inventory of food and toilet paper and water? It comes back to that kind of crazy, basic type of, you know, hunting, gathering type of life, right? But it is your responsibility, I believe, as a leader for your family and for your business to be able to think about those scenarios.
And I think just think about your life back to when maybe you've had a really rough time that you survived through before, and kind of try to hone in on the strengths, the skills, because I think the worst of times can be the best of times when you look back at them, because we're pulling together as a nation. I feel like my husband and I are growing closer, pulling together the family. We're all chatting more. I think there's some good, even though there's a whole lot of bad, but there's some good that could come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we're getting a chance to do this type of interview, right? And
Right.
hopefully be able to reach all the different people in your audience, wherever they're at in the world.
Yeah, and I think we always wish for time off, right? But we didn't want it this way. And I think sometimes the universe just gives us all a clue. We need to slow down and take inventory, like you said. But it could also be reflection on, am I living the life I'm meant to live? And if I'm not, what changes could I make? I really could probably make some changes. And then just make some of those, and if you're home and you're stuck in the house, do some decluttering,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some taxes, workouts. I don't know, like whatever your thing is, you could
Yeah.
probably learn something online from somebody. Take a course.
100%. 100%.
Or start your podcast.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, this is, I think it's one of those times that people could take an honest assessment with what are the wants and needs of like what their business and what they want to be able to accomplish. I think on the other end of that, look, it's also okay to take some time and just be like, hey, I'm just going to let this sink in and ride itself out a little bit. You know what I mean? There,
Yeah, yeah,
I think different people react differently, right? I
right.
don't think it's a time to like
No
judge
judgment.
anybody
Right.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, of like some people, they'll see this as like, oh, this is my opportunity to write my book that I've been like putting off of, right?
Well, because
Which
some people are dependent on a job, like, and
that's right.
I mean, we all are, but some people, it's paycheck to paycheck for them right now. And so they're not thinking about writing a book. They're thinking about, how am I going to eat and where am I going to get toilet paper?
And that's also very important. Those are important things, right? It's like books are nice, but hey, look, we got to make sure like everybody around you is good. You're in good health, right? So I think doing those absolute fundamentals, those basics, doing that inventory check of like who's around me, how about myself, like just making sure you're showing up, you know what I mean, for yourself, right? Before all this other business stuff and systems and process. Those are all fun and great, but look, it's still going to be there. I think you do have to make sure that, you show up as the number one asset.
I think when tragedy strikes, fake success kind of falls away and you start to really see what actually matters. And like right now, wow, my health is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a valuable commodity because that's what it takes to run the ship. And if you're sick and unhealthy, or your family members can't be present because they're sick, I just think we're learning to value things that we were taking for granted before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's times of tragedy tends to do that, right? We always kind of say, hey, you know what? Be more grateful for all the things that we never would have acknowledged or
Like
even
bleach
seen.
wipes. I mean, I'm telling you, I am hoarding some. No.
Yeah.
I literally, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to be able to keep spraying the gem, wiping it down, because this
Right.
is before they said it's closed, because I wanted to make sure that everything was corona free.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your podcasting company and how it got started.
Look, I think it's a very important fundamental, because I feel like so much of this conversation has been around this idea, right? Let's go
Yeah.
back to basics. Don't
Yeah.
overcomplicate it. Don't worry about the funnels with 20 steps. Don't worry about, anything else that seems super complicated for you. Look, the agency got started because we listened to what our customers were saying, right? And I've been speaking and in podcasting for the last 5 years, right? We would run private trainings, we'd run company trainings, we have an online accelerator program, right? And we were out there, we were pushing. And eventually I started seeing some customers like would meet in person, they'd come to an event that I was speaking at, or maybe would meet at like a different type of event. And they would say, hey, Jay, love your stuff. But I find myself when I buy it, it's not nothing against you, I just know I'm so busy in doing everything that I'm doing, right? Whether it's a mom or a dad or running my business and then having to take care of like my partner or what have you. Like there's so much going on. I would love to be able to have a podcast, but not do all the million little steps in between, right? Like I kind of want to just like show up, do the interview, create the solo episode, and that's it. Right. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I would like.
Techie.
Everything else is a little techie, I'm not exactly sure. I need that vote of confidence. Right. So like I started listening to this and I go, hey, look, I could force everyone to just buy another copy of my course. Like, what am I going to say? Right. Like, oh no, this is all the tech. What they're saying is, hey, look, love this. But if there was a way for you and your team, or if you guys had a process around this, it would be amazing. Right. And so first thing I did was went back to some of those conversations, said, hey, look, if we made this process, we created it with you, would you write us a big check for it? I think this is a very big fundamental, right? We didn't build a website. We didn't, go out and build some complicated funnels. We just said, hey, look, we believe we can help you with this. And this is what it will take for us to do this together. And just so you know, full transparency, we've never have done this before, right? But two, here's our background. Right? Like, here's my team. You're going to be using my exact editors, my exact designers. This is how we think about it. We just haven't systemized the whole process yet. Right? So that was about 18 months, 2 years ago, somewhere between there, about 20, 21 months ago. And we really haven't looked back because we have found it to be an amazing process working with thought leaders, working with companies, working with different authors, consultants, in having them kind of operate within their unique ability, right? Getting them to do the teaching, getting them to be in flow. Exactly. And then having our team master this process and have it be our unique ability. Like we have editors that like they sit down, they drink coffee, and they do post-production and editing every day. Right?
They're good at it.
They're good at it. And that's what they do, right? We have individuals that they not only do they transcribe and write the show notes, but like they're like a copywriter. That's what they do.
I love that because I will tell you, I edited my own a few times in a pinch, and well, I remember this lady. I was doing speaking, I was doing improv, and she had talked about this person that just said so many times that it just drove her insane, and so much so that she complained to the manager about it. And I thought, well, geez, that's a little extreme, until I edited a podcast where I literally had to edit out 200 ums. That's when I knew this is not what I want to do with my life. Is there somebody out there that's really great at this that doesn't mind editing the ums out?
That's right. That's right. And look, you'll be shocked, right? That there are people, if we did an exercise, everybody that's listening to this, you got out a sheet of paper and did an inventory. There's a lot of these recurring themes in this episode. I like it. We did an inventory of what you did over the last week, your last work week, right? Maybe don't take this week because it's a little bit of an anomaly, but what are all those activities, right? Whether it's answering emails, a min task, editing, right? Audio editing, video editing, hiring people. Like there's just so many different things. And if we can actually take most of those things off your plate, it's pretty amazing what can happen with your sanity, right? With your mental space, and also the way that you teach and the way that your business can grow, right? So that's really what we do. We kind of take all the headaches and all the icky stuff away from that process. We get people into the top 100 of iTunes, but above all, we just make sure that their show is a perfect representation of their brand, their business, what they stand for, their values, and it's able to drive some leads, because those are good, for a rainy day and for a sunny day as well, right?
Right. And even Rachel Hollis says, when people ask her, how did you do all of this? She's like, I didn't do it alone. She didn't do it by herself. And every great person, that has a business or something major has a team behind them. They didn't do it. They didn't get on that mountaintop by themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that has been, I think, just the biggest gift, and it's been the biggest lesson, right? Of saying, hey, how can we, one, figure out what our own unique ability is, whether that's in teaching or coaching or going out there or having the vision for the company, like whatever it is, right? And so once you identify that, how can I do more of those things, right? And then how can I partner with people and team up with people that also understand this concept, that their unique ability is in organization, right? Their unique ability is in systemizing, and follow up, right? And so, these are just things that, I've had to learn over the last few years, but they've been, some of the biggest lessons and biggest gifts, really, to our entire business.
And you have your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about that. The Inner Change Maker. What is that all about?
Yeah, so it's the podcast I started right when I kind of started creating content, and didn't know anything about internet marketing at that time. It's not a show on internet marketing. The theme of that show has always been this idea of leaders choosing legacy over currency, right? So how could we go out there and create the legacy that we want, and also be able to help others, right? Be able to make an impact. And I kind of use that podcast as so many of the experiments we ever run with, because you have your own podcast, you can kind of run it, right? And so we've had that podcast now for the last 4.5 years. And it's been amazing. We've published over, 250, I think almost 300 different episodes. And it's just been something that's been phenomenal to be able to have your audience, build it that way, and be able to leverage the medium. But yeah, that's the Inner Change Maker. And we're going to be launching a couple of new shows pretty soon. Within the next couple months, depending on when this gets
love
out.
the fact that you were in the #1 spot. And actually, my favorite podcast was #2, The School of Greatness. That's how I got started into podcasting in the first place. Was
nice.
Very first listen, it like changed my life. So I love that, to see that you landed in that space, and kudos to you.
Yeah. Look, I just think right now, the podcasting space is one of those spaces that it's shifting not as quickly as the world, but it's evolved, right? Launching a podcast back in 2015, very different than what you do today, right? In terms of how you want to win and how you want to monetize. But I do genuinely believe that we are certainly in the golden age of video, but we also are certainly in the golden age of audio at the same time. And audio is just one of those ways, just like what you're doing, the level of intimacy that you could build with an audience and a community. You're talking about 1,000 true fans, you're talking about future customers, you're talking about current customers, right? Whoever the avatar is, audio, leveraging that as a thought leader, as a lady boss, as a heart-centered individual, however you categorize yourself, is an amazing way of building momentum in general.
And we have a whole lot of lady bosses out there. Heck yeah.
That's right.
I love it. I love the whole idea of leveraging, and it is such an intimate, audience. You are in their ear, and I believe you create change just from one listen, like with my first podcast. And I'm sure many of your listeners feel the same way that are tuning in to the Inner Change Maker.
Yeah. It's been quite the ride, and I can't wait to continue it, because I think it's only evolving and it's changing from here.
This has been such a great conversation with you today. You're so dynamic, so innovative, full of fresh ideas, and just fun. I really enjoyed it today.
Thank you so much, Linda. Appreciate it.
Where can the audience reach out to you? And if anybody wants to hook up with your podcasting service, where can they find it?
Yeah, super simple. Look, if you got any value out of today's podcasts and out of any of the ideas that we and me and Linda just kind of tossed around and dove into, Inner Change Maker, that's kind of like my little space in the podcast world personally. I am going to be launching a couple new shows, but if you follow that one, that's probably going to be the easiest to kind of see the updates. If you want anything around podcasting, doneforyoupodcast.co. That is kind of our home, and more than happy to chat with you around your show and the strategy you would need to win with podcasts.
And give us one tip for somebody out there that's been thinking about starting a podcast, but they're afraid.
So I find this really funny because it reminds me of when I was starting out. Somebody gave me a free ticket to, because, I wasn't really doing anything with my time outside of, going through some courses, coming up with different ideas, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, because I didn't really have a business and I was just starting, right? Ended up at an event where Seth Godin was speaking. And
cool.
for those of you who don't know, Seth has written 18 plus marketing books. He blogs every single day. He's just an amazing thought leader around marketing and business. And he said something along the lines of, in life, a lot of people try to get rid of the fear, right? Especially in a crazy time like today, people try to get rid of the fear. Hey, how can I eliminate the fear? Because without the fear, then I would be fearless, right? But his whole thing was, hey, look, don't eliminate the fear. That's not what human life and existence is all about. It's actually about learning to dance with the fear, right? Learning to lean into the fear, right? Because that's what makes us human, right? That we feel like we get nervous. We feel the butterflies in our stomach before we go on stage, right? That's what makes it all human and faulty, and that's the imperfect perfect, right? That's what he was talking about. And I always thought about that because I thought, it isn't about just getting rid of the fear. So if you are afraid, if you are saying, hey, look, I'm scared to put myself out there, I'm not sure if this is for me, I would say lean into that, right? Don't try to run away, right? Just like we were joking around with hey, look, if you're going to freak out, just freak out, right? Just have a freak out party from 9 to noon, right? But then let's have a more productive afternoon. So look, if you're scared, schedule some time, be scared, talk about all the things that you're scared about, but then we can be in a better place to do something about it.
I love it. This has been great today. And that was great advice, Jay. Thank you so much.
Appreciate everything, Linda. I really am.
Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat.